I want to talk to you about the amygdala. It's this structure that's positioned anteriorly, so in front of the hippocampus in our brain. And it's named the amygdala because amygdalae in Greek means almond, and it's really just describing the shape of the structure of the amygdala that kind of looks like an almond. So what is it all about? What happens when the amygdala is active? Well, first I'm going to tell you this little case study, this story of this guy who got the nickname the Texas Tower Sniper. Maybe the name kind of gave you a hint, but this guy ended up becoming one of the biggest mass shooters of his time in 1966. But anyway, he was a smart guy, totally normal to do. This is how the story goes. Until at the age of 25 in 1966, he goes and he kills 14 people, sniping them down. Starts shooting these people down, and he also happens to go and kill his wife and his mother. As it turns out, this guy actually kind of knew. He didn't know, but he had the intuition that something was wrong with his brain, and he wrote that down on paper. He also said he wanted his brain to be autopsied and explored to further our understanding as to what's happening in our brains. So after Charles Whitman died, he actually found that there was a glioblastoma, so a tumor right next to his amygdala that was making his amygdala hyperactive. This is what made a lot of researchers and scientists believe that the amygdala was all about aggression. Given a larger body of evidence, the amygdala has actually been found to be more closely associated with fear and uncertainty as opposed to strictly aggression. In support of that are these projections, these axonal projections that go from the periaqueductal gray, which is this brain center, when stimulated, induces panic attacks in people. And in people that have chronic panic attacks, this area of the brain is enlarged. And so this would also support the idea that uncertainty, anxiety, sort of this concoction of just like fear is what the amygdala is all about. And you might say, oh yeah, all these things are bad. Why would you want the amygdala evolutionarily? Or why did it develop in us? Well, it would make sense for us to be afraid of something so that we avoid that thing in the future, right? And that's what's really happening in the amygdala. We actually have to learn about the fear so that we can avoid the future danger that could present us. So there's actually a center in the amygdala where we store these fears that we learn about. We have innate fears that we are born with and we are naturally afraid of, and there's no learning that needs to happen for us to learn that fear. But then there are also conditioned fears, and those actually happen on the basolateral amygdala, whereas the innate fears are right in the central amygdala. When there is, let's say, a stimulus that goes along with the fear, you start to associate whatever that stimulus was with the fear that you felt from the thing that you felt. So let's say the classic example is someone shocks you, you get just the shock, right? And that's stimulating the central amygdala. However, the next time you have a sound that is happening with the shock. And then after that, it'll happen again and again and again until your brain starts to think, okay, well, if I'm gonna have the sound, then I'm probably also gonna have the shock. Your brain starts to associate the two as things that are necessarily gonna happen. And that's all happening at the BLA, the basolateral amygdala. Those neurons are starting to sort of connect with the central amygdala neurons, creating synapses and talking to each other, saying, okay, whenever there's a sound, there's probably also going to be a shock. This can be unlearned. And the way to do that is by using your rationale, by using your frontal cortex to say to yourself, to expose yourself to the sound, but not having the shock being involved. In response to that increased exposure to the sound without the negative stimulus, that being the thing that makes you afraid, you will gradually stop being conditioned, this what we'd call Pavlovian conditioning. That's just the guy that established this relationship between the whatever sensory stimulus, the thing that you hear, and the actual painful stimuli. It doesn't necessarily have to be painful. It could be a good thing. You could have like food. In the Pavlovian study that everybody talks about, a dog hears the ring of a bell and then associates that with food that's coming, and so the dog will start to salivate in response to the ringing of the bell, assuming that there's going to be food. Anyway, that's the Pavlovian conditioning that you probably already know about. The reason that I hesitate to say that the amygdala is strictly the fear center and more the place of uncertainty is, I guess, fear is a fair thing to say. Like, you could say amygdala is the fear center of the brain. There's actually projections from the insular cortex, the place where you have all your gustatory function, your taste. And let's say you have some food that's sort of rancid that you don't actually like. It's there that you're going to interpret that disgust. And it turns out the projections going from the insular cortex to the amygdala activate in response to things that are morally abhorrent, things that are morally things that you don't agree with, things that you find disgusting. So why the heck would this be happening at the amygdala? Why would the amygdala care about things that are morally disagreeable? Well, I think it makes sense if we understand the amygdala is having a role socially. If I say to myself, let's say I'm a Neanderthal or some dude way long ago with his tribes, and I'm trying to associate myself within a group. I have to find the right group for me. I have to find a group that agrees with the things that I find morally acceptable. But if I don't have my amygdala to let me know that maybe this is not the right group, to tell me, okay, Deke, that's my name. My name's Sadiq. Okay, Deke, relax, man. I think these people are a little off. Something's a little off with them. Something's a little wrong with them. Maybe I should just let them do their own thing and then go do my own thing, or maybe join a different group. If I don't have that, well, it's maladaptive. It won't help me to pass on my genes to the next line. So here we can see that the amygdala has a social role in identifying things that kind of give you this gut fear feeling, this gut instinct that things aren't quite right with these people. And that's really what we're talking about here. So the amygdala, in talking with the insular cortex, allows us to assess social situations that are not really favorable to what we believe to be morally acceptable. When we think about fear, I think it's also super, super, super important that we think about what happens to our body when we are scared of something. Our heart rate increases, our respiratory rate increases. We start hyperventilating. We go, and why do you think we might do that? Why would our blood pressure increase? Why would our respiratory rate increase? Well, we need more oxygen, and we need our blood to start pumping faster to our skeletal muscle so that we can feed our skeletal muscle to move at a faster rate, to output more power so that we can possibly get away from the predator that's stopping us from sending our genes on to the next generation. Doing all those things, we're actually activating what's called our sympathetic nervous system, where everything is firing, the fight or flight response. And the way that the amygdala helps in this process when we are in fear of something is by talking to this amygdala-ish structure called the bed nucleus of the striae terminalis, that has projections that go out to the hypothalamus that start the HPA axis, which then creates cortisol and makes you stressed out and gets you going. The amygdala also talks to this other structure in your brainstem called the locus ceruleus that has projections that go out to the cortex, the big part of the brain on the outside, to let everybody know that they need to let all those neurons fire as well. So it sends norepinephrine out to all those areas so that you are fully activated and amped up and ready to run away from the black bear that's behind you, or the other tribe that has a bunch of spears that they're trying to throw at you and your family, trying to stop you from extending your line. But you won't let that happen, will you? Because you got that norepinephrine firing around to the rest of your body and brain, getting you amped up and ready for everything. Let's say that a spear gets thrown at your head and then you instinctively have to dodge it. Well, you're only going to know it's a spear once it's either in your body or on the ground. Once your brain has been able to process the thing that's been thrown at you. But let's say you dodge it and you're able to react and your body moves immediately. It's only after that you dodged it that you're actually consciously able to interpret, oh, there's a spear that has been thrown at me and and I've been able to dodge it. It's not like time slows down and you take a visual picture of the spear that's been thrown at you and you consciously say to yourself all the time that, oh yes, it was a spear in that moment that I saw coming past my ear, and I was able to shift my body to one side and bam, that spear happened to miss me. That's not really what's happening. Here, I mean, that surely can happen if it's coming from far away and you're able to say, oh yeah, there's this thing flying over, it's coming at me. But maybe you instinctively see it coming from behind and you say to yourself, oh yeah, I'm gonna get out of the way, right? There, what's happening is instead of going to the thalamus and then to your occipital cortex, just allowing you to process what's going on in your brain, it's going to immediately go to your amygdala and allow for you to dodge the stimulus and get away from the thing that could have really ended your life and stopped you from passing your genes on to the next line. As it turns out, this pathway of kind of skipping the processing of actually learning about what the thing is that you're dodging, while very adaptive, can also be maladaptive, as you can probably imagine. If I start to think that the person that's taking out the paper for me to sign for a new job or whatever is a gun, let's say they're wearing like a coat or something and they whip out a paper to sign, but I think it's a gun because I'm anticipating, my amygdala is so amped up and ready to anticipate any sort of dangerous stimuli. If I think that's a gun, well, and then I'm happen to be possessing a gun myself, and I whip out that gun and then I press the trigger in anticipation of this guy also having a gun because it's threatening my life. Well, then here's a really bad situation where I actually ended up hurting somebody else, and it's all because of this pathway just being too strong of me anticipating this dangerous situation. And so this is where more research has shown that individuals that have PTSD also actually happen to have a enlarged amygdala. That being said, this is obviously an adaptive thing where in a small dose, it's obviously good for us to have. You want to be afraid of something so that you're able to react to any dangerous stimuli, even if you're not able to interpret what that stimuli actually is. Sometimes it's a good thing because you're able to avoid a dangerous situation. That is my overview of the amygdala and what it's about. I hope you enjoyed this video. Peace.